After a series of devastating fires,
fire crews are being pushed to their limits.
it's more important than ever.
I'm hearing another propane tank type explosion.
To be prepared.
These are our wind gust gauges.
Tonight, how to protect your family.
What is most critical? Where do we start? And it always starts with the safety of the public.
And your property.
That first 5 feet is so critical in defending homes and decks.
Plus the newest tools.
We have so many different tools and technologies that are available to us.
Keeping communities safe.
Fire season is now year-round.
In a KCRA 3 special, Wildfire Ready.
Thank you for joining us. I'm meteorologist Heather Waldman.
And I'm meteorologist Tamara Bird. Of course, this year started off extremely dangerous fires in Southern California. And now the fuels are dry across the state. You can see that behind me. And the heart of wildfire season, it's right around the corner. We want to make sure your family has the information you need to stay safe.
Of course, it was back in January. A series of fires hit the Los Angeles area, leaving 30 people dead and forcing hundreds of thousands of people to evacuate. It was another huge wake-up call, proving these huge wildfires can impact heavily populated areas, and all Californians need to be ready for potential fire danger.
Over the past few months, CAL FIRE has been releasing new fire maps showing which parts of the state are at the highest hazard levels.
We spoke with local leaders about what this means and how their rules could change as their communities expand.
A terrifying start to 2025.
Fire crews are being pushed to their limits by 4 large fires.
Showing just how many buildings are on fire.
The wind, the dry air, and the very dry fuels.
2 monstrous wildfires.
Just the sheer devastation there was such an impact.
Claiming 40,000 acres, 16,000 structures, and 28 lives, all in just a few days.
Something like this can happen anywhere. It can happen in my backyard.
The wildfires in LA County are an extreme example of the risks of living in the wildland-urban interface. These are areas where neighborhoods back right up to vegetation that can fuel large wildfires. A 2022 study found that nearly 1/4 of Californians live in these zones.
CAL FIRE's updated fire hazard severity zone maps show how that risk is rising.
We have seen a significant increase in the intensity and even the destruction of wildfires.
As California's climate changes and communities expand into wildlands. Rocklin and Rancho Cordova are 2 cities that saw their hazard zones expand.
I think we're in a good place as a city to respond to that.
Rancho Cordova City Manager Micah Runner focused on communication between the city's emergency response teams.
It's always something we're paying attention to and learning from.
And stopping fires before they start.
Making sure lots are mowed and doing the enforcement side so that you're mitigating some of those potential risks.
In Rocklin, doing the same, but with a little help.
Rocklin was one of the early adopters of something very unique, and that's the sheep and the goats.
Mayor Jill Gallardo says her city works closely with neighboring Roseville and Lincoln.
Because fire doesn't recognize city boundaries.
An elected leader for nearly 10 years, Gallardo has seen firsthand how her city has learned from recent destructive fires.
Absolutely, we've all learned from that, and we're a lot smarter and a lot more prepared.
California State Fire Marshal Chief Daniel Berlant hopes that awareness grows and cities think fire safe as they expand.
How we build homes, how we build developments, how we maintain defensible space.
That planning, setting communities up to survive the next fire.
Now is the time that it's critical that all Californians are taking the steps to be prepared.
Several communities are updating their local ordinances following the release of those new CAL FIRE maps. We'll continue to update you on air and online when new rules are approved. Officials in Lake Tahoe say there are 3 main pillars when it comes to fire readiness: forest and fuels management, home hardening, and reliable water access.
We've learned from recent California wildfires that the 3rd pillar needs some repair. KCRA 3's meteorologist Ophelia Young shows us how Tahoe is leading the way, making sure firefighters always have water.
Water. So close, yet so far. Too far during a fire.
We're looking for pools, areas where there's ponds, and anything that we can draft or pool water from.
Battalion Chief Goldberg and Assistant Chief Newman were sent to Southern California earlier this year to battle the Eaton fire.
The Eaton neighborhood is an old neighborhood, multiple different types and styles of fire hydrants. Some of them had water and some did not.
The aged municipal water system struggled.
Even helicopters are, they're dipping out of tanks, and so how do we fill those and how do we keep those going?
Back in South Lake Tahoe,
it burned all the way to the vein, right across the ground.
Scorched trees remind the community every day to work together. They ready the forest, they ready their homes. But is water ready?
So this is a relic from, the 50s.
Okay.
The 1950s.
And we still have some of those around?
We do. If you add fire hydrants every 500 feet on this small 2-inch water main, only so much water can flow through that, right?
That question answered 18 years ago.
When the Angora fire happened, it was a wake-up call for the basin.
The wind-driven Angora fire raged through more than 3,000 acres. Goldberg and Newman remember some hoses ran dry.
Choking up a little bit because it absolutely does. When you're overwhelmed, when you see so many structures on fire at the same time and have to make those decisions.
254 structures gone that summer 2007. Since then,
we're going from a 2 to an 8-inch water main. We're installing fire hydrants every 500 feet.
Plus larger water tanks and booster pumps to thrust water uphill into those tanks, and backup generators for the wells. For the times the power is shut down.
That's often when we need water the most, especially in a fire situation.
On the other side of Tahoe, in Homewood.
It's corroding.
Yeah, it's definitely corroding. So this system is basically failing.
This is a water main that they just pulled out of the ground. It was installed back in the 50s or 60s, and as you can tell, only an inch wide. So small that you can't even hook a fire hydrant up to it. Well, they're upgrading it from this to ones that are about a foot wide, potentially increasing the flow by 10 times as much.
Water access is now more than just a pipe dream. This area only had 12 hydrants.
And now we'll have over 50.
That's kind of scary to think.
It is, and I think that people don't understand that. Like you don't really notice that you don't have fire hydrants in your neighborhood. Yeah. I think we kind of take it for granted.
As fires outgrow water systems, its access is the latest distress in fire readiness.
We learn from each fire, but each fire has been getting bigger and we've been learning different things.
Forest and fuels management, community hardening, and now a robust water infrastructure.
There's a fire engine parked on this corner. It's our job to make sure that this hydrant is up and running.
A lake-wide effort, literally put to the fire in 2021. The Caldor fire.
We definitely stood by at our fire station and made a pact that we were not going to lose a single structure.
Confidence in their hearts, a hose in their hands, and water not far.
Really allowed those resources to concentrate on the firefight rather than try to worry about where they're going to have enough water.
Caldor incinerated 1,000 structures, none in South Lake Tahoe.
Did you guys ever lose water?
No, we never did. Nope, thankfully. Yeah.
In Lake Tahoe, Ophelia Young, KCRA 3 News.
Wildfire is a natural part of California's climate. Our short, wet winters matched with long, dry summers guarantee that there will be plenty of fuel every year. Over the past 5 years, an average of 1.7 million acres have burned across the state. That number can vary a lot from year to year, sometimes just because of one fire. Last year, nearly 1 million acres burned across the state, but close to half of that acreage was the Park Fire, which tore through grasses and brush in Butte County starting in July. 2022 and 2023 were much quieter years. Weather, of course, is a big driver of how easily a fire can start, how fast it can spread. But according to CAL FIRE, weather only starts 5% of fires each year. The rest are started by people, both intentionally and unintentionally. Anything from throwing a cigarette to dragging trailer chains could spark the next big fire. Do your part and be aware of that risk this summer and fall.
This is the time of year it's important to have a go bag ready in case you need to evacuate. Here's what CAL FIRE recommends: a 3-day supply of non-perishable foods, 3 gallons of water, a map, medications, a change of clothing, car keys, credit cards, and cash. A first aid kit's a great idea, as well as a flashlight. copies of important documents, and pet food and water. They say the smaller items, keep those in a backpack. Now for the food and water, use a wheeled tub, something that's easy to transport.
Reducing the risk of wildfires. We'll show you the Tahoe community using new technology to prevent fires and how they're hoping more foothill towns follow suit. Welcome back to our KCRA 3 Wildfire Ready Special.
Heather, there's a community in Tahoe that's leading the way in wildfire protection. Incline Village is aiming to become the most fire-ready community in the entire Tahoe Basin.
While it looks like your typical neighborhood, there are visible and non-visible signs that this one is ready for fire.
It is not an expectation that we'll never get fire. The expectation is if that fire dares to come into our community, we're going to be able to fight it and take it down very quickly and efficiently.
Homeowners in this Incline Village neighborhood uniting for one goal, talking about bringing resources together. It's a collaboration of wildfire mitigation across public lands, utility corridors, and neighborhoods.
Wildfire has a way of finding that one vulnerability. And so if you're not really holistic in the way that you're trying to drive that risk down, you're not going to have the outcomes that you want to have when fire does strike that community.
This is where the BurnBot comes in.
You have to be thinking about treatment from the wildlands to the neighborhoods, to the homes, to the utilities.
BurnBot creator says his robots were built for tough terrain, with a mission to prevent wildfires by removing the hazardous fuels that they thrive on.
2 machines, 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 operators can get the same amount of work done in a couple of days that a 20 or 40-person hand crew would take a couple of weeks.
Think of it as Silicon Valley tech infused with the knowledge of the crews on the ground.
We don't know of any other HOA in Tahoe that's brought BurnBot in to do the defensible space work at the neighborhood level.
One of the larger purposes of this pilot program is to create a model that others can use to help communities across Tahoe and throughout the West.
So we're going through all this process to really not be fire preventative, but to be ready and to reduce the risk.
Linking science with strategy to efficiently build resilience against wildfires.
It's really an all-hands, all-lands approach to mitigating wildfire. And as more and more people are living in the urban-wildland interface, a program like this could save properties and lives.
We've mentioned those deadly and destructive fires earlier this year in Los Angeles County. Meteorologist Dirk Verdorn shows us the conditions that made them so dangerous.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the weather's role in the Eaton fire, which also includes the Palisades fire because they were both going on at the same time. But I'm going to focus on the Eaton fire and the 3 things that were significant factors, weather factors, in making this such a extreme event. First one were the drought conditions going on at this time. From Los Angeles to San Diego, they were under a severe drought. They had dry conditions for the past 8 months. In fact, it was historic. The dry conditions starting in May with only 0.13 of an inch. Normally for the month, 0.32 of an inch. The next months, these are the dry months, June, July, August, September, where they get very little rain, and they received no rain during that time, at least no measurable rainfall. And then you get into the months where we started to see the chance for rain coming in, but nothing in October, only 0.14 of an inch in November and December, which is usually a pretty big month, and receiving almost 2.5 inches of rain. They received only 0.02 of an inch of rain and had no rain all the way till January 7th when the fire started. So that's the first condition. We only had 0.29 of an inch of rain from May through January 7th. Typically, they have almost 4.5 inches. That's the normal for that same time frame. So very, very dry conditions. The second condition that we had that was weather related was the direction of the wind. A weather pattern setup with high pressure out here off the coast of California and an area of low pressure over Southern California. What this does is it sets up an offshore wind. Now in Southern California, they call that a Santa Ana wind. And it's a very dry wind where you have this dry air that sets up over the southern deserts of the Southwest and Southern California. That air gets pushed up over the mountains and into the LA basin. This was the pattern that we saw at the beginning of January. That set things up for the high fire danger. Red flag warnings were issued, and these conditions lasted while the fire started and all during while the firefight was going on, all the way through mid-January, we continued with an offshore breeze. Even though it did weaken some, there were still some gusty winds over the mountains, through the canyons, and into the valley there in Southern California. So conditions stayed that way through, again, about the 11th, 12th, 13th, we still had that offshore breeze. The third factor that we're dealing with this was the mountains roll, the northeast winds going over the San Gabriel Mountains. Those winds getting pushed from the Mojave Desert, elevation about 2,500 feet, with temperature of the air at about 60 degrees on that date, got pushed up over the tops of the mountains, which sits at about 7,000 feet. As the air rises, it cools. That's just a natural phenomenon that goes on. As the air rises, the air cools. But the opposite occurs as it goes down the west slope of the San Gabriel Mountains. That's called a katabatic wind. And what it is you have these very dry conditions, a dense air mass that's been sitting over the deserts, then actually picks up steam like a roller coaster rolling downhill. Gravity helps to increase the speed of those winds. And as it made its way into the San Gabriel Valley, temperatures were in the mid-70s, so actually a warmer, less dense air mass. So that also helps with that momentum of the winds. Another feature here is the canyons. Look at all these canyons that are in the San Gabriel Mountains. As the air descends into those canyons, there's a funneling effect that takes place. That air gets squeezed through the canyons, increasing the speed. In fact, we had wind speeds over the mountains, through the canyons, and into the valley that ranged anywhere from 60 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts, that making for a blast furnace effect with the fires once they started in the Altadena area. If you think that a situation like this is just centralized in Southern California, you're mistaken, because even in Northern California, we've had some wildfire events like the Camp Fire in Paradise and the Tubbs Fire in Santa Rosa that had similar effects like what we experienced here.
A reminder that the KCRA 3 Weather Team has developed its own fire threat index to help you understand when weather conditions are increasing the risk for wildfire. The index is broken down into 4 regions so it can be more specific to your area. Every day, the weather team analyzes 3 important weather factors: fuel moisture, humidity, and wind strength. Then we take those into consideration and give you the expected wildfire risk over the next 4 days.
Protecting your home by adding defensible space. If your home has a patio area outside, it might be a nice place to relax with the family, but did you know it could also be a fire danger? We'll tell you how to make sure those areas are protected. Welcome back to our KCRA 3 Wildfire Ready special. When we think about defensible space around our home, we can forget that patios and what we put around them can be a serious fire hazard.
Meteorologist Kelly Curran visited Paradise, a city devastated by the Camp Fire back in 2018, to check out what makes a patio fire safe.
The wind started picking up terribly, and it was completely black, and we decided we needed to leave.
Melissa Schuster lost her home to the Camp Fire in 2018, but Paradise is still her home.
We just were determined to build back here and be a part of what we could see was going to be a better future for Paradise.
And that meant rebuilding with non-combustible materials, even the deck.
These are metal. Everything is metal or concrete,
including the furniture.
This piece right here, this survived the Camp Fire.
All of this metal furniture survived the Camp Fire, yes.
But that doesn't mean it has to lack comfort.
The cushions are okay, but I don't tie them down, because if we have a red flag day with high winds or something like that, it will take me less than 5 minutes to pull all these inside the house.
And don't forget to preserve that defensible space.
That first 5 feet is so critical in defending homes and decks from embers landing in that area or an encroaching wildfire reaching close to the house.
The surface of the patio is what gets the most use, but Steve Hawks with the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety says the underside of the deck is just as important.
If you have a deck that is a low elevation, about 4 feet or less above the ground, is enclose the outer edge of the deck with a metal mesh that is 1/8 inch or less gap so that debris can't blow underneath the deck.
This is a metal pan that the concrete is actually poured into. So these posts are all metal. It's kind of like a parking deck. that we could probably park up there if we could get there, but so it's sturdy, it's completely fire safe.
And when it comes to plants, choose non-combustible material for the pots, keep them watered, and don't use mulch. Succulents are also a great option, and they grow really well in this climate too.
In these high-intensity wildfires like the Camp Fire and Eaton Palisades, it's all about the systems-based approach. Even one vulnerability in the house can lead to its ignition and loss.
Kelly Curran, KCRA 3 News.
Outdoor kitchens and grills are popular items to have on patios. The Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety says they can be safe as long as they are also made of non-combustible materials and kept at least 5 feet away from a structure.
Good advice. And we have much more on the KCRA 3 app. To find out wildfire guide, just scan QR code on your screen. Right now on the guide, you can track active fires and get alerts for any evacuations that might happen. We also have important information about how to prepare for fires and those details on what to put in your go bag. That's all posted on the KCRA 3 app.
Thank you for joining us for our KCRA 3 Wildfire Ready special, and have a good night.